A homeless girl found an extremely expensive watch belonging to a millionaire. Grateful, he offered a reward, and what she chose made him cry like a child. The scorching sun beat down on the main avenue, where Ivy, a 10-year-old girl with hazel eyes and tangled hair, wandered among the crowd. Her worn-out dress and bare feet revealed her hard life on the streets. With cautious steps, Ivy moved through the people walking by, her eyes fixed on the ground, looking for something that could ease her hunger. Suddenly, a glimmer caught her eye. There, in the middle of the sidewalk, lay a gold watch encrusted with diamonds. Ivy picked it up with trembling hands, amazed by its beauty. Someone must be desperately searching for this watch. I am hungry and it looks expensive, but I cannot keep it. This is the right thing to do. My kindness is all I have, and I cannot give that up. I will find the owner and return it, she thought, her heart beating with a mix of hope and fear. While Ivy was thinking about how to find the owner of the watch, a shout pierced the air like a knife. "Thief, that girl stole my watch," shouted a young man with an elegant appearance in a designer suit, who Ivy would later find out was named Oliver. His blue eyes shone with fury as he pointed at Ivy. The girl, frozen with fear, clutched the watch to her chest. "No, sir, I swear. I found it on the ground. I was looking for the owner to return it. Is it yours? I will give it back to you. I would never keep something that is not mine. That is not the right thing to do." "Here, take it," stammered Ivy, her voice barely audible amid the noise of the street, holding out the watch to return it. The man moved toward her, his face twisted with anger. "Liar. I know your kind. Look at those torn clothes and that dirty face. It is clear you were going to steal what is not yours. You will pay dearly for what you have done. I will call the police." Panic took over Ivy, her mind filled with images of cold, dark cells. Without thinking twice, she turned and started to run before she could hand over the watch. Her bare feet pounded against the hot pavement as she skillfully weaved between people. Oliver, surprised by the sudden escape, took a second to react. "Stop that girl! Catch her now! She is a thief! She is stealing my father OTM's watch!" he shouted, starting the chase. Ivy could hear his heavy footsteps behind her, getting closer and closer. She thought of throwing the watch on the ground, but did not want to be accused of damaging it. "Please, God, do not let him catch me," she whispered, tears beginning to stream down her dirty cheeks. The chase continued, with Ivy zigzagging between parked cars and narrow alleys. Her heart pounded so hard it felt like it would leap out of her chest. Oliver, determined to get his watch back, did not give up. He pulled out his cell phone while running, dialing quickly. "Police, there is a thief running away on the main avenue. A homeless girl stole a watch of inestimable value," he gasped into the phone. Ivy, hearing the word police, felt a new surge of adrenaline. She turned a tight corner, almost losing her balance. "I cannot go to jail. I did nothing wrong. I just wanted to return the watch. Why is he doing this to me?" she thought desperately, frantically searching for a way out. In the distance, Ivy heard the sound of sirens approaching. Fear threatened to paralyze her legs, but she forced herself to keep going. Turning another corner, she spotted a small gap between two buildings. Without hesitation, Ivy squeezed through the narrow space, her clothes tearing on the rough bricks. Oliver, too big to follow her, stopped abruptly at the entrance of the alley. "You cannot hide forever, you little thief," he shouted, his voice echoing between the walls. Ivy, hidden in the shadows, clutched the watch tightly to her chest. Silent tears streamed down her face as she tried to control her ragged breathing. "What do I do now? Where do I go?" she thought, the fear of the unknown mixing with the injustice of the situation. Ivy tried to control her breathing. The sound of the sirens grew louder, echoing off the narrow alley walls. Her heart pounded so hard that she feared Oliver might hear it. Suddenly, a strong hand grabbed her arm, pulling her out of the shadows. It was a police officer. "We found you, little girl. Let us go to the station to clear up this story," he said, his voice firm. Ivy, unable to resist, let herself be taken, the tears now flowing freely. "Please, sir, I did not steal it. I swear I found the watch," she sobbed, her voice barely audible. The officer just sighed, guiding her to the patrol car that was waiting. At the police station, Ivy curled up in a chair that was too big for her, watching Oliver gesture furiously as he gave his statement. The chief, a middle-aged man with tired eyes, listened carefully, occasionally casting curious glances at Ivy. "So you say this girl stole your father's watch?" asked the chief, his calm voice contrasting with Oliver's agitation. "Exactly. I saw her taking the watch and running away. She is a street thief, obviously," Oliver exclaimed, his face red with anger. Ivy wanted to scream, to say it was a lie, but fear kept her silent. "Why does nobody believe me?" she thought, feeling more alone than ever. The chief scratched his chin, thoughtful. "Well, since the watch belongs to your father, Mr. Oliver, we will need him to come to the station to confirm the story and possibly file the complaint," he said, picking up the phone. Oliver looked momentarily disconcerted but nodded stiffly. Ivy watched the scene with a mix of fear and hope. Maybe his father will be more understanding, she thought, clinging to that thread of hope. The chief turned to Ivy, his expression softening slightly. "In the meantime, I will need to hear your side of the story, young lady," he said, pulling up a chair to sit in front of her. Minutes dragged on as Ivy, her voice trembling, told her story. The chief listened attentively, asking occasional questions, his face a mask of professional neutrality. Oliver, on the other hand, paced back and forth, clearly impatient. Suddenly the door of the station opened, and a tall, well-dressed man entered. It was Mr. Theodore, Oliver's father. His eyes scanned the room, first landing on Oliver, then on the chief, and finally on Ivy. His expression changed from confusion to something Ivy could not decipher. "Father, this is the girl who stole your watch," Oliver exclaimed, pointing accusingly at Ivy. Mr. Theodore raised a hand, silencing his son. "Calm down, Oliver. Let us hear the whole story first," he said, his voice surprisingly gentle. Mr. Theodore approached Ivy, who instinctively shrank back. To her surprise, he knelt down to be at her eye level. "Hello, little one. Can you tell me what happened?" he asked, his voice calm and reassuring. Ivy, gathering all her courage, began to tell her story once more, her voice gaining strength as she spoke while tears ran down her face. Mr. Theodore listened attentively, nodding occasionally. "Anyway, I wanted to return the watch. Here, take it," she finished, picking up the object from the chief's desk, who gave her a sharp look, asking her not to touch the evidence. Then Theodore turned to the chief. "I will not press charges. In fact, I would like to offer temporary shelter to this young girl. She is just a child. She should not be on the streets like this," he said, to the astonishment of everyone in the room. Oliver started to protest, but Mr. Theodore silenced him with a look. Turning to Ivy, he smiled gently. "What do you think, young lady? Would you like a safe place to stay for a while?" he asked. Ivy, barely believing what she was hearing, felt a wave of relief and gratitude. "Yes, please, sir, thank you. I have never had a home. It would be a dream to have a warm place to sleep and stay. I promise I will be a kind girl and bring you much happiness," she whispered, a small smile forming on her lips for the first time that day. Maybe, just maybe, things can get better. Something good has to happen, she thought, a spark of hope igniting in her heart. Mr. Theodore helped Ivy up, his hand gently guiding her toward the exit of the station. As they passed by Oliver, Ivy felt a chill run down her spine. The young man leaned in, his lips almost touching her ear. "You may have fooled my father, you little thief, but do not think this is over. If you come to our house, I will make you regret it bitterly," he whispered, his voice as cold as ice. Ivy shuddered, the fear tightening her heart once again. She looked at Mr. Theodore, who was unaware of his son's threat. Did I make the right choice? What awaits me in this new house? Ivy wondered, uncertainty clouding her newfound hope. Minutes later, Mr. Theodore's car smoothly glided through the imposing gates of the mansion, revealing a world that Ivy had never imagined existed. Her wide eyes scanned the meticulously kept gardens, the marble fountains, and the majestic facade of the house. As they got out of the vehicle, Ivy hesitated, her hands nervously clutching the hem of her tattered dress. Mr. Theodore, noticing her discomfort, smiled gently. "Welcome to your new home, Ivy. I hope you will be happy here. You may wonder why I offered to bring you here. I can sense when I meet someone with a good heart, and I see the purity through your eyes. I imagine how hard it must be to live on the streets, and I believe we all should help those in need," he said, guiding her up the marble steps. At the top of the staircase, Oliver was waiting, his face a mask of indifference. "I still cannot believe you brought a dirty, ragged girl into our house. Do you not see that she does not fit in here?" he remarked, his tone icy. Ivy swallowed hard, feeling the weight of Oliver's gaze on her. "Do not be cruel, my son. We all can go through hard times. Let us believe in the goodness of people." "She is only a child," Mr. Theodore replied, as he led the girl through the house. "Why does he hate me so much? I did not steal from him, I did nothing. I would be cleaner if I had a home and a good shower. It would be a dream to take a bath every day," she thought, fighting the urge to hide behind Mr. Theodore. As they entered the mansion's grand hall, Ivy was left speechless by the opulence that surrounded her. Crystal chandeliers hung from the high ceiling, paintings that seemed to be worth fortunes adorned the walls, and the polished marble floor reflected the light like a mirror. "Enjoy it while you can, street rat. Soon my father will realize the mistake he made by bringing you here," he whispered, his voice filled with contempt. The tour of the house continued to the mansion's second floor, with Mr. Theodore eagerly explaining the history of each room and object. When they reached a corridor filled with family photographs, he stopped, his expression softening with a mix of sadness and nostalgia. "This here in the photograph is my late wife, Elizabeth. I still feel happiness when I see her portrait, when I see my wife's eyes full of kindness. She would not have hesitated to offer you help. I do what I can to keep her memory alive and try to be a reflection of what she believed in. Kindness, simplicity, and helping others," he said, pointing to a portrait of a woman with a radiant smile. Ivy looked at the photograph, noticing the resemblance between Elizabeth and Oliver. "She was very beautiful, Mr. Theodore. I have no doubt she was an excellent person," Ivy commented timidly. The man nodded, a sad smile on his lips. "Yes, she was. And she had a heart as beautiful as her appearance," he replied, lost in memories. Oliver, who was watching the scene with growing irritation, snorted quietly. "Father, do you not think you are sharing too much information with a stranger?" he questioned, casting a sharp look at Ivy. Ignoring his son's comment, Mr. Theodore led Ivy to a smaller, cozier room. In the center, on an ornate pedestal, rested a fine porcelain vase decorated with intricate gold and blue patterns. This was Elizabeth's favorite vase. "It was a wedding gift from my grandmother, and Elizabeth loved it," Mr. Theodore said, his voice heavy with emotion. Ivy approached cautiously, fascinated by the beauty of the object. "It is beautiful. It seems very expensive and valuable, but I believe the most important value is the love it carries," she murmured, resisting the urge to touch its gleaming surface. Oliver, watching the scene with growing irritation, approached abruptly. "Sounds like a thief talking about the monetary value of the vase. Should I be worried you will steal my mother's favorite object?" he said, pushing Ivy slightly to the side. The girl stumbled, almost losing her balance, her heart racing with the fear of falling onto the precious vase. While Mr. Theodore continued to explain the history of the vase, seemingly unaware of the tension between Oliver and Ivy, the young man leaned toward the girl again. His lips nearly touched her ear as he whispered, his voice dripping with malice. "You know, Rat, it will not be long before my father realizes you do not belong here. Who do you think he will side with? The dirty orphan or his own son?" he asked, and Ivy felt a shiver run down her spine, the fear growing in her chest like a cold wave. She looked at Mr. Theodore, who was smiling kindly, completely unaware of Oliver's veiled threat. "What do I do now? How can I stay here with Oliver hating me so much? Will I ever have a place to call home?" Ivy thought, feeling trapped. "I did nothing to you. We can be friends, be a family. I am sure you have a good heart and would not do anything to me," she replied, but Oliver completely ignored what she said. "Do not pretend to be nice. I will not be your friend, and I do not believe you." "I cannot wait for you to leave here," he responded while his father was distracted. Night fell over the mansion, enveloping it in shadows and silence. Ivy, lying in her new luxurious bed, could not sleep. Her stomach growled, reminding her that she had not eaten in a long time. Mr. Theodore had let her take a bath in her new bathroom, but he forgot to give her food, probably not used to having someone in need in his house. Used to long periods without meals on the streets, Ivy tried to ignore the hunger, but the discomfort persisted. Finally, gathering courage, Ivy decided to venture through the sleeping house in search of the kitchen. Maybe I can find something to eat without bothering anyone. Mr. Theodore said I could feel at home here, but I do not want to give Oliver more reasons to hate me, she thought, sliding silently out of the room. Tiptoeing down the stairs, Ivy guided herself by the memory of the tour through the house given earlier by Mr. Theodore. After a few tense minutes of searching, Ivy finally found the kitchen. It was a vast room with gleaming appliances and marble countertops. Cautiously, she opened the refrigerator, the sudden light making her blink. The abundance of food left her momentarily stunned. I have never seen so much food in one place. How can anyone want more than this? I remember when I used to dream of having a house full of food like this. How many days did I spend dreaming of having something to eat? She murmured to herself, in awe. As Ivy contemplated what to take, a distant noise made her freeze. Footsteps were approaching the kitchen. Panic took hold of her, her mind racing in search of a way out. Looking frantically around, her eyes landed on a large pantry cabinet. Without thinking twice, Ivy squeezed herself inside, silently closing the door behind her. Her heart was pounding so hard, she feared it could be heard. Please, do not let it be Oliver. What would he do if he caught me here? Would he accuse me of stealing the food? I do not want him to hurt me or scold me, she prayed silently, trying to control her ragged breathing. Through the cracks of the cabinet, Ivy saw the kitchen light turn on. To her horror, Oliver entered the room, followed by a man she did not recognize. The stranger was tall and thin, with an angular face and sharp eyes. Oliver seemed agitated, pacing back and forth as he spoke in a low voice. We need to get rid of her, understand? That street girl cannot stay here. I have to find a way to make her leave, Ivy heard Oliver say, his tone urgent. The stranger nodded, his voice calm in contrast to Oliver's agitation. I understand, sir. I have an idea that could solve this problem. The girl will not stay here more than a day. You will blink and she will be gone. I promise. Ivy felt her blood run cold. They are talking about me. What do they plan to do? She thought, fear growing in her chest. The conversation continued with Oliver and the man whispering to each other. Ivy strained to listen, catching only fragments of their discussion. Make it look like an accident. No one will suspect. She will wish she had never come here. No one will believe her. Each word increased Ivy's terror. She wanted to scream, run, do anything to escape the situation, but fear kept her paralyzed inside the cabinet. Silent tears ran down her face as she struggled to remain still. Why is this happening to me? I just wanted a place to call home. Did I ask for too much? She thought desperately. Suddenly the footsteps approached the cabinet. Ivy held her breath, her body trembling uncontrollably. The doorknob began to turn slowly. The doorknob turned fully, and the cabinet door swung open, revealing Oliver's shocked face. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Ivy's eyes, wide with terror, met Oliver's, which quickly changed from surprise to fury. You! What are you doing here? Now, besides being a thief, you are a spy. Are you spying on me? That is why I do not trust you, he growled, reaching out to grab her. Ivy's survival instinct took over. With an agility born of desperation, she dodged Oliver's hands and darted out of the cabinet. Get her, shouted Oliver, his voice echoing through the kitchen. Ivy ran like she had never run before, her heart pounding so hard it felt like it might burst out of her chest. I cannot let them catch me. If they reach me, everything will be lost. I am sure they will hurt me, she thought frantically. Ivy dashed through the mansion's hallways, her bare feet sliding on the polished floor. Behind her, she could hear Oliver's heavy footsteps, his furious voice echoing off the walls. The darkness of the mansion, once frightening, was now her ally, allowing her to move quickly while her pursuer stumbled and cursed. Rounding a corner, Ivy glimpsed a staircase leading to the upper floor. Without hesitation, she began to climb the steps 2 at a time, her breathing ragged and uneven. Where do I go? I do not know this house well. I have nowhere to run, she thought desperately. Reaching the top of the stairs, Ivy found herself in a long corridor. Family portraits watched her from the walls, their serious expressions seeming to judge her intrusion. The sound of footsteps was getting closer, and Ivy knew she did not have much time. She ran down the corridor, her eyes frantically searching for an escape, a window, anything. Suddenly, her foot slipped on an ornate rug, causing her to stumble. Struggling to regain her balance, Ivy bumped into a side table. Time seemed to slow as she saw the precious vase of Theodore's late wife teetering dangerously. "No, no, no!" Ivy screamed, reaching out in a desperate attempt to prevent the inevitable. But it was too late. The vase fell, shattering on the floor with a deafening crash. The sound of the vase breaking seemed to echo throughout the mansion, followed by a deadly silence. "What have I done? Now everything is truly lost," Ivy thought, horror overwhelming her. At that moment, the hallway light suddenly turned on, blinding Ivy momentarily. When her eyes adjusted, she found herself facing a scene that made her blood run cold. Mr. Theodore stood a few meters away, his face a mask of shock and disbelief. Beside him, Oliver smiled triumphantly, his eyes gleaming with cruel satisfaction. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the distant sound of porcelain shards settling on the floor. Ivy opened her mouth to speak, to try to explain, but no sound came out. Tears began to roll down her face as she looked from Mr. Theodore to the remains of the precious vase. "Please, it was an accident. I did not mean to. Please do not scold me, do not hurt me. I did not do it on purpose," she finally managed to whisper, her voice trembling. Mr. Theodore stepped forward, his face now contorted into an expression Ivy could not decipher. Was it a desire to punish her, disappointment, or something worse? "Ivy, what have you done?" he began, his voice low and controlled but filled with emotion. Mr. Theodore, still stunned by the scene before him, made a silent gesture for everyone to go down to the living room. Ivy, trembling from head to toe, followed obediently, feeling Oliver's piercing gaze on her back. The heavy silence accompanied them down the stairs, interrupted only by the muffled sound of their steps on the luxurious carpet. When they reached the living room, Mr. Theodore turned to Ivy, his face a mixture of conflicting emotions. "Ivy, please explain yourself. How did this happen? Why were you out of bed so late?" he said, his voice tense but controlled. Ivy opened her mouth, but the words seemed stuck in her throat. She looked from Mr. Theodore to Oliver, her heart pounding so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. I was just hungry. I went to the kitchen, but I got scared when Oliver appeared and I hid in the cabinet, afraid he would accuse me of stealing the food. When he saw me, I was scared he would scold me, and I ran. That was when I slipped and knocked over the vase," she finally managed to stammer, her voice barely audible. Oliver, who until then had maintained a triumphant silence, let out a scornful laugh. "Hungry? Is that what you're going to use as an excuse? Father, do you not see what is happening here? This street girl is taking advantage of your kindness." He practically spat out the words, pacing back and forth, gesturing furiously. "First she steals your watch. Now she destroys the most precious memory we had of Mother. What will it be next?" Ivy felt the tears come back with full force. She wanted to scream, to say it was not true, that Oliver was lying, but fear paralyzed her. "Please believe me. I never meant to cause any harm," she thought desperately, looking at Mr. Theodore. Mr. Theodore raised his hand, silencing Oliver. He approached Ivy, his eyes searching hers. "Ivy, I understand that you may be scared and confused, but I need to know the truth. Why were you walking around the house in the middle of the night? Was it really hunger? Why did you not ask for something to eat before going to bed?" he began, his voice softer now. Ivy took a deep breath, gathering all the courage she could. I swear it was to eat. Then I heard voices in the kitchen. It was Oliver and a man I do not know. They were talking about getting rid of me," she began, her voice trembling. She glanced at Oliver, seeing his face pale for a moment before twisting in fury. "Liar! How dare you make up such lies?" he shouted, advancing toward Ivy. Mr. Theodore positioned himself between Oliver and Ivy, his expression now serious. "Calm down, Oliver," he said firmly. "Let Ivy finish." He turned back to the girl, encouraging her to continue with a nod. Ivy, trembling, continued her story, detailing how she heard the conversation and how, in her panic to escape, she accidentally broke the vase. As she spoke, she could see Mr. Theodore's expression changing, shifting from confusion to concern. Oliver, on the other hand, seemed increasingly agitated, repeatedly interrupting with accusations and vehement denials. "She is lying, father. How can you believe her and not me, your own son? She is a street girl, she had no education. Of course she is lying and was in the middle of the night trying to steal from us," he insisted, his face red with anger. Ivy felt a glimmer of hope as she saw the doubt in Mr. Theodore's eyes. Maybe he will believe me, she thought. Maybe finally someone will see the truth. The silence that followed seemed to weigh a ton. Mr. Theodore looked from Ivy to Oliver, his face a mask of internal conflict. Finally, he let out a long sigh. "Ivy, please go to your room. I need to talk to Oliver in private and think about what to do next," he said, his voice tired. Ivy felt her heart sink. She wanted to protest, to insist on her innocence, but Mr. Theodore's tone left no room for arguments. Slowly she stood up, casting one last pleading look at Mr. Theodore before heading to the door. As she passed Oliver, he leaned in slightly, whispering so only she could hear, "It is over for you, rat. Pack your bags." Ivy felt a chill run down her spine as she climbed the stairs toward her room, the uncertainty of the future weighing on her shoulders. What will happen to me now? Will I go back to the streets? Or something worse? She thought, the fear growing in her chest. Ivy entered the guest room, closing the door softly behind her. The room, which once seemed like a dream come true, now resembled a golden prison. Her legs trembled as she walked to the bed, collapsing onto the soft mattress. The tears she had fought to hold back in the presence of Mr. Theodore and Oliver now flowed freely. Silent sobs shook her small body as she hugged the pillow. Why is this happening to me? I just wanted a home, a family. Was that too much to ask? Ivy thought, her mind replaying the events of the night. She slowly got up, looking around the room that, for a brief moment, had been her refuge. With trembling hands, Ivy began to gather her few belongings. The tattered dress she wore when she arrived, now washed and carefully folded on a chair. A small comb Mr. Theodore had given her, saying that every young lady needed one. And hidden at the bottom of the drawer, a single coin she had earned on the streets that very morning. Each item told a story of hope and disappointment. Ivy placed them carefully in a bag she found in the closet, her tears falling onto the objects. Maybe I should never have agreed to come here. Maybe the street is the only place where I truly belong, she murmured to herself, her voice choked with emotion. Exhausted both physically and emotionally, Ivy lay on the bed, clutching the bag against her chest. Her eyes burned from crying so much, and her mind spun with dark thoughts about the future. The fear of the unknown battled with the overwhelming exhaustion. What will happen to me now? Where will I go when they send me away? She thought, feeling the weight of the world on her small shoulders. Slowly, exhaustion began to win, and Ivy felt her eyelids grow heavy. Against her will, she started to fall asleep, her last conscious thought a mixture of fear and resignation. The sound of the door opening jolted Ivy from her restless sleep. She sat up abruptly, her heart racing, eyes wide in the darkness of the room. A familiar silhouette was outlined against the light from the hallway. Oliver. He entered silently, closing the door behind him. Ivy shrank back against the headboard, clutching the bag with her belongings as if it were a shield. "What do you want?" she stammered, her voice trembling with fear. Oliver did not respond immediately. He walked around the room, his footsteps echoing in the oppressive silence. Finally, he stopped at the foot of the bed, his face partially illuminated by the moonlight coming through the window. "So you know, Rat, you really caused a big problem tonight," Oliver began, his voice surprisingly calm. He picked up an object from the desk, twirling it between his fingers. Ivy recognized the comb Mr. Theodore had given her. "My father is downstairs, crying over losing his only memory of my mother, and wondering whether or not to believe your little story. But it does not matter. Tomorrow morning, everything will become clear." Oliver chuckled softly, a sound that made Ivy shiver. He placed the comb back on the desk and walked toward the door. Before leaving, he turned to Ivy one last time, a sinister smile playing on his lips. "Sleep well, Rat. You are going to need all your strength tomorrow." With that, he left, leaving Ivy in the darkness, confused and terrified. Oliver's words echoed in her mind as she tried to decipher their meaning. What did he mean by everything will become clear? What is going to happen tomorrow morning? Ivy thought, fear growing in her chest. Morning arrived with a palpable tension hanging over the mansion. Ivy went down for breakfast with hesitant steps, her bag firmly clutched against her chest. The dining room, with its imposing table and high-backed chairs, seemed even more intimidating than the night before. Mr. Theodore was already seated at the head of the table, his face tired and worried. Oliver entered shortly after, wearing a smile that made Ivy's stomach twist. "Good morning, Father." "Good morning, Ivy," he said, his voice strangely cheerful. Ivy mumbled a response, avoiding both of their gazes. As she sat down, she could not help but think, why is he so happy? What is he planning? Breakfast passed in an uncomfortable silence, broken only by the clinking of silverware on plates. Ivy barely touched her food, her appetite completely suppressed by anxiety. Suddenly, Oliver set his fork down with a clatter, causing Ivy to jump in her chair. "Father, something terrible happened early this morning. I wanted you to have your breakfast before giving you this news," he began, his voice heavy with concern. Mr. Theodore looked up from his plate, frowning. "What happened, Oliver?" The young man sighed dramatically before continuing. "My jewels, they are gone." Ivy felt her heart race, the realization of Oliver's plan beginning to take shape in her mind. He would not do something so cruel to me. He would not accuse me of something I did not do. No, I am sure Oliver has a good heart. He is just a resistant person, she thought, panic rising in her chest. Mr. Theodore seemed stunned by the news. "What do you mean they disappeared? When did you notice this?" Oliver shook his head, pretending sadness. "In the early morning before going to bed. I went to check my things before sleeping and found the safe in my room open and empty." He cast a meaningful glance at Ivy, who shrank in her chair. "Father, I hate to suggest this, but considering recent events, perhaps we should search everyone's belongings," he said, and Ivy felt the blood drain from her face. She knew she had not stolen anything, but the fear of being falsely accused left her paralyzed. "No, please," she thought desperately. "They cannot do this. They will blame me, I am sure." Mr. Theodore seemed reluctant, but Oliver left no room for arguments. "Very well, let us do this right now. Ivy, please bring your bag," said Oliver. With trembling hands, Ivy placed her small bag on the table. Oliver approached, a gleam of anticipation in his eyes. "Let us see what we have here," he said, opening the clasp. Ivy watched in horror as Oliver rummaged through her few belongings. Suddenly he stopped, a triumphant smile spreading across his face. "What is this?" he exclaimed, pulling a small velvet pouch from the bag. Ivy's mouth fell open, unable to believe what she was seeing. "No, it is not possible. I have never seen that before," she stammered. With a dramatic flourish, Oliver opened the pouch, spilling its contents onto the table. A cascade of glittering jewels spread out before them, diamond necklaces, sapphire earrings, gold rings. Mr. Theodore stood up abruptly, his face a mixture of shock and disappointment. "Ivy, how could you?" he murmured, the pain evident in his voice. Ivy felt the world crumble around her. Tears began to stream down her face as she shook her head frantically. "No, please believe me. I did not steal anything. Someone must have put this in my bag," she pleaded, her voice choked with sobs. But as she looked at the faces of Mr. Theodore and Oliver, Ivy realized her pleas were in vain. The triumph in Oliver's eyes and the disappointment in Mr. Theodore's were clear. The tense silence in the dining room was broken by the sound of a chair scraping against the floor. Ivy, unable to bear the accusing looks, stood up abruptly. Her body trembled, tears flowing freely down her face. I did not do this," she whispered, her voice choked with sobs. But the expressions on Mr. Theodore's and Oliver's faces made it clear that her words fell on deaf ears. The fear of being arrested, even though she knew she was innocent, overwhelmed her. Without thinking twice, Ivy ran to the front door, her heart beating frantically. "I cannot stay here. They do not believe me. They might call the police again, and this time no one will believe me. I have to get out of here," she thought desperately as her legs carried her away from the mansion. Minutes later, Ivy crossed the garden in a blur. the distant shouts of Mr. Theodore barely registering in her ears. She found herself back on the city streets, the sudden freedom hitting her like a wave. The familiar urban landscape, once a symbol of her hard life, now seemed like a refuge compared to the unjust accusation she had faced. Ivy ran aimlessly, her legs carrying her farther and farther from the mansion and the brief hope of a home that she had experienced. Where will I go now? I am alone again with nothing and no one, she thought, the reality of her situation beginning to weigh on her. The sky, as if reflecting her mood, darkened quickly. Thick raindrops began to fall, soaking Ivy in a matter of minutes. She wandered aimlessly, feeling the cold and trembling, her bare feet splashing in the puddles that formed on the now deserted streets. Tears mixed with the rain on her face as the reality of her situation hit her with full force. Why did this have to happen? I had a home, even if just for a short time. Now I am back on the streets, alone and hungry, she sobbed, hugging herself against the biting cold. The rain continued relentlessly, washing away Ivy's last hopes. Days passed since her departure from the mansion, each day more difficult than the last. Ivy returned to her old routine of surviving on the streets, but something had changed inside her. The brief experience of comfort and security at the mansion made life on the streets even harsher and more cruel. She slept in dark alleys, always alert, fearing being found or recognized by the police if they had reported her for theft. Hunger was a constant companion, her stomach aching from the lack of food. Ivy scavenged through trash bins looking for scraps. Each meal found a small victory in her daily struggle for survival. Will I ever have a real home again? Or is this my fate, always living in the shadows of the city, rejected and alone? No, I cannot think like this. The world is a good place, and good always prevails. One day I will find a place to live, food and a warm house for myself, Ivy thought as she stumbled down the sidewalk, weakness making every step a challenge. Suddenly, a scream cut through the air, pulling Ivy from her dark thoughts. Help! Someone help me! The male voice sounded desperate and strangely familiar. Without thinking twice, Ivy ran in the direction of the sound, her instinct to help momentarily overcoming her fear and hunger. She turned a corner and stopped abruptly, shocked by the scene before her. There, cornered against a wall by two burly men who were trying to rob him, was Oliver. His face was contorted with fear, so different from the arrogance Ivy had known at the mansion. Without hesitation, Ivy ran toward the scene, her heart pounding frantically. "Leave him alone! Do not hurt him! Get off of him!" she shouted, her voice small but determined. The two men turned, surprised by the interruption. Ivy took advantage of the moment of distraction and threw herself against one of them, using the full weight of her frail body. The man staggered, allowing Oliver to move away from the wall. The other attacker, recovering from the surprise, grabbed Ivy by the arm, twisting it painfully and leaving a mark on her small arm. She screamed in pain but continued to struggle, kicking and writhing with all the strength she had left. "Run, Oliver, run! Let me deal with them!" she shouted, knowing she could not hold off the men for long. Oliver, paralyzed by shock, watched the scene with wide eyes. Tears began to stream down his face as he saw Ivy, the girl he had accused and mistreated, risking herself to save him. The sight of her, so small and fragile, facing two much larger men, awakened something inside him. "Let her go! Take everything I have and leave us alone! She is just a child!" he shouted, finding courage in his desperation. He moved forward, trying to help Ivy, but one of the men pushed him hard, making him fall to the ground while the other hurt Ivy. The sound of sirens in the distance made the attackers hesitate. Looking at each other, they decided that the risk was not worth it. They pushed Ivy roughly, making her fall beside Oliver, and quickly fled down the street. Ivy groaned in pain, her body aching from the confrontation. Oliver, still crying, crawled over to her. "Ivy, are you okay? Are you hurt? Where does it hurt?" he asked, his voice trembling. Ivy tried to sit up, gasping in pain. "I think so," she murmured, looking at Oliver with a mix of confusion and concern. Seeing Ivy's injuries and realizing the deplorable state she was in, Oliver felt a wave of guilt and shame wash over him. Without thinking twice, he picked her up in his arms. "Come on, we need to take care of you. No one is going to hurt you now, okay?" he said, his voice now gentle and worried. Ivy, too weak to protest, allowed Oliver to guide her. They walked slowly through the streets, Oliver supporting Ivy's weight in his arms. "Why are you helping me?" Ivy asked, her voice barely a whisper. Oliver swallowed hard, the words stuck in his throat. "Because I was a fool, Ivy. A blind and cruel fool." Arriving at the mansion, Oliver took Ivy straight to his room, ignoring the surprised looks from the servants. Carefully, he helped her sit on the bed and began to tend to her wounds. His hands, usually used for gestures of disdain, now moved with kindness as he cleaned and bandaged Ivy's cuts and bruises. The silence between them was heavy, filled with unspoken emotions and deep regrets. Ivy watched Oliver, still unable to believe the change in his behavior. "Why did you do that, Ivy? Why did you help me after everything I did to you?" Oliver finally asked, breaking the silence. Oliver's words opened the floodgates of his emotions. Tears rolled down his face as he began to speak, his voice choked with emotion. "Ivy, I do not even know where to begin. What you did today. I have never seen such courage and kindness in my entire life. You risked everything to save me, even after how I treated you. I was blind, Ivy, blind with my arrogance, with my prejudice. I judged you by your appearance, by the kindness I saw in you that I believed you were faking. Judged you by your poverty and simplicity, without ever taking the trouble to know who you really are." He paused, trying to control his emotions. "I went to an important meeting today, trying to prove my worth to my father. But I tried to cut through the traffic and took an unfamiliar route, ending up lost in the city, in areas I had never seen before. That was when those men cornered me. I was terrified, Ivy, and then you appeared like a guardian angel, risking your own safety to save me, even though I had done you so much harm." Oliver continued, his words flowing like a torrent. "Seeing you fight for me, I realized how wrong I was. My whole life I judged people by what they had, not by who they were. But you, Ivy, you have nothing materially, and yet you have everything that truly matters: kindness, compassion, and a pure heart. You showed me what it really means to be rich. Rich in spirit, in purity. I was so unfair to you, so cruel. I accused you unjustly, made your life a living hell, and yet, when I needed help, you were there for me." Tears now ran freely down Oliver's face, and he made no effort to hide them. "I do not deserve your forgiveness, Ivy, but I want you to know that you changed my life today. You showed me a kind of strength I never knew existed, a strength that comes not from power or money, but from the heart. I promise you, here and now, that I will change. I will be a better person, someone worthy of the kindness you showed today. And if you give me the chance, I will spend the rest of my life trying to make up for the harm I caused. My home is now your home. You can stay here as long as you want. I will tell my father about the jewels, explain everything, and you will have a place to stay and a family that will love and take good care of you. That is the least I can offer after what you did for me." Ivy looked at Oliver, her eyes wide with surprise and emotion. His words touched her heart in a way she never expected. For a moment she was silent, taking in everything he had said. Then, with a trembling voice, she replied, "Oliver, I do not know what to say. Your offer is more than I ever dreamed of having. But are you sure, after everything that happened?" She paused, tears shining in her eyes. Oliver gently took Ivy's hands in his gaze intense and sincere. "I am more certain of this than anything else in my life, Ivy. You taught me a lesson I will never forget. Your kindness and courage showed me the kind of person I want to be. Besides, I think my father will be happy to have someone with such a big heart in our family." He smiled softly, an expression Ivy had never seen on his face before. At that moment, as if summoned by Oliver's words, Mr. Theodore entered the room. His eyes took in the scene, Ivy hurt on the bed, Oliver holding her hands, both with tears in their eyes, and his expression changed from concern to confusion. "What is happening here?" he asked, his voice a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Oliver stood up, facing his father with a new determination in his eyes. "Father, I have a lot to tell you and much to apologize for. Ivy did not steal the jewels. I was the one who put them in her bag. I lied, manipulated, and caused so much suffering. But today, Ivy saved my life. She risked everything to help me, even after all the harm I caused her. She showed me what really matters in life: Oliver explained, his voice firm despite the tears. Mr. Theodore listened in silence, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. When Oliver finished, he approached Ivy, kneeling beside the bed to be at her eye level. "Ivy, it seems I owe you a great apology, and an even greater thank you for saving my son, not just physically, but also from himself. If you give us another chance, I would really like you to stay with us," he said softly, smiling gently, his eyes shining with a new understanding. "But tell me, Ivy, you tried to return my watch that day at the police station, and now you have saved my son. What do you want in return?" Mr. Theodore asked, curious to hear Ivy's answer. Ivy looked from Mr. Theodore to Oliver, her heart overflowing with emotion. After so long being alone, after so much pain and suffering, she had finally found a place where she belonged. A home, a family. With her voice choked with emotion, she replied, I do not want anything but a family, a home, and people I can love who will love me back. That is all I want." As she spoke, Oliver and Mr. Theodore began to cry, both unable to hold back tears in the face of the innocent simplicity of the girl's request. "You will have all of that, dear. You will live here, not as a guest, but as part of our family. Thank you for bringing your beautiful heart and teaching us so much about what truly matters, my daughter," said Mr. Theodore. Then, father and son smiled through their tears, and at that moment, Ivy knew her life had changed forever. Not only had she found a home, but she had also touched and transformed the hearts of those around her. 6 months had passed since that transformative day when Ivy saved Oliver and found her true home. The Theodore mansion, once cold and imposing, now radiated love and joy, reflecting the profound change that had taken place in its inhabitants. Ivy, still 10 years old, flourished under the care of her new family. Her smile, once rare and timid, now constantly lit up the halls of the house. She quickly adapted to school, her natural intelligence finally having a chance to shine, and her kindness made her beloved by everyone around her. Oliver, for his part, kept his promise to change. He became a protective and caring older brother to Ivy, always ready to help her with homework or simply listen to her stories. His transformation surprised everyone, especially the mansion's staff, who noticed a new depth and compassion in his behavior. Mr. Theodore, inspired by Ivy's kindness and Oliver's transformation, decided to use his influence and resources to help children living on the streets. He founded a charitable organization that provided shelter, education, and opportunities for disadvantaged youth, with Ivy as his inspiration and honorary advisor. Nights at the Theodore mansion were now filled with laughter and lively conversations during family dinners. Ivy, Oliver, and Mr. Theodore shared their experiences of the day, celebrating small victories and supporting each other through challenges. As she watched Oliver and Mr. Theodore laughing together, Ivy smiled, knowing that her journey from a street girl to a beloved member of a family was a testament to the power of kindness, compassion, and the ability to change that exists in every human heart. The future, once so uncertain and frightening, now shone with promises and endless possibilities. If you enjoyed this story, we invite you to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support motivates us to continue bringing you touching stories almost every day. Do not miss the next surprising narrative that is about to appear on your screen. We are immensely grateful to have you here with us. Now you can click on the links that are appearing on the screen right now. We have a special selection just for you, full of valuable stories and guaranteed entertainment. See you there.